Um, First, I would like to confirm that everyone can hear me and everyone can see me. So if that is the case, you can
we can see you and we can hear you loud and clear.
Beautiful, beautiful. Good morning once again. Like Mercy said, my name is Emmanuel. I'm privileged to take you all on this session, and I'll be sharing my screen shortly.
Martino,
I would like
to our
to
bedside. See that my airport ringing from me.
Please, we strongly advise that you mute your mic. That's very important. That will help us avoid every form of distraction. I would also like you to confirm that you can see my screen. Please confirm that you can see my screen. Hello. Hello.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, thank you for that wonderful feedback. I would like one or two other persons to also confirm that they can see my screen so that we can proceed. Or you can drop it on the chat box. Okay, yeah, I've seen a few responses. Okay, that's great. So good morning once again. Today we'll be discussing, we'll be looking at the course citizenship education. And this is GNS 111. It's a privilege to be here, like I said before, and within the short time we'll be spending together, I'd like us to pay maximum attention so that we can all have value for our time. So first, I'd like to run us through the objective of today's course. This will actually guide us on what we intend to cover today, right? First is we want to understand the Constitution of Nigeria, we want to understand federal system of government in Nigeria, we want to know the constitutional rights and obligations of Nigerian citizens. We want to understand the word citizenship. What does it mean? We also want to look at the fundamental objectives and directive of state policy in Nigeria. So having said this, we'll move straight into the first topic for discussion, which is constitution. Now, I would like to start by saying there's no organization, there is no body that will function optimally without a constitution, be it written or unwritten, right? So where there is law, right? Where there is law, there are bound to be offenses. And when there are offenses, there's bound to be punishment. So these are many more is what a constitution helps an organization or a group of professionals to achieve. And like you can see on the screen, the constitution is the nation's basic law. It creates political institutions, assigns or divides powers in government, and often provides certain guarantees to citizens. Now, let's look at it in simple terms. You can agree with me that when we talk about constitution, right, you can agree with me that it's a set of fundamental rules that determines how a country or a state is run. So meaning for every state, for every country, even organizations, they are binded by the constitution, right? And like I mentioned earlier, it could be written, it could be unwritten. So as we continue in this class, we'll get to see countries that practice written constitutions and countries that practice unwritten constitution. These are part of what you'll be learning as we continue. Now, let's quickly look at the different types of constitution, like I mentioned, right? We have the written, we have the unwritten, right? Written means a set of codified laws, means it's for some countries, it's a document, right? A document that everyone must abide to. A document that guides, their processes, that talks about the rights, responsibility, the duties of government, the responsibilities of the citizens and the likes, right? Please, if you do have questions, feel free to drop it on the chat box so that we'll try as much as possible to attend to everyone as quick as possible, as quick as we can. So let's look at the first one, which is what you are seeing on the screen, right? The written constitution. So constitution may be written or unwritten, depending on the type of government it supports, right? Example of countries that practice written constitution. Anyone can, share an example of countries that practice written constitution. So if you have an idea, you could drop it on the chat box. Countries like USA, countries like our dear country, Nigeria, countries like Canada, countries like Australia, Brazil, and the likes, right? So when we say written, it means the constitution, or these are set of rules or set of laws that are codified in a particular book. So everything is put down in a booklet. So that's what we mean when we say written constitution. So it's a document. So when you talk about the Nigerian constitution, it's a document that contains all these things that we have mentioned. Now, when we talk about the unwritten constitution, right? This is a little bit different from the first that we explained. Now, they could gather, they could have a set of rules or set of laws written in different, documents. So you see the difference. This one is one particular document that contains everything. While the unwritten is constitutions found in different sources, the customs and traditions, anything, but they must be abiding, And like I said earlier, please take note. This is very, very important. This is very, very important. You may be asking what role does the Constitution play, right? In simple terms, it helps to take care of the right of the citizens, and also the Constitution helps to showcase the duties of those in power, the duties of the government. Does that make sense? And countries that practice the unwritten constitution, like Great Britain, those are countries that practice the unwritten constitution. So let's look at the next one. We're still discussing the types of constitution. Let's look at the rigid and the flexible. Some countries practice a rigid constitution. So when you say something is rigid, from the word rigidity, it simply tells you that this set of laws cannot be amended easily. So that's what that rigidity means. So there are countries who practice this rigid kind of constitution. So it simply means that the laws they abide to cannot be amended easily. While some other ones practice the flexible one, right? An example of countries that practice a rigid constitution or that uses the British constitution are countries like Nigeria, countries like America, USA, Switzerland, Australia, and even Canada, right? Canada. Then countries that practice flexible constitution. From the word flexibility, it tells you that it can be amended or changed easily, provided it passes through some procedures, right? And countries that practice this flexible constitution are countries like the New Zealand, Finland, Italy, Togo, and some other African countries. These are countries that practice. Then let's look at legal continuity. Okay, before we talk about legal continuity, let's also, it would be nice to bring to your attention another type of constitution that we have or that exists, which is, although this is not contained in the slide, but this is for knowledge sake. So we have unitary constitution and we have federal constitution, right? Example of countries that practice unitary constitution are countries like France, Britain, Belgium, like, so have a few countries like that, right? So it simply tells is what it means. What it means is that the central government of the country, right, they operate in absolute power, meaning they take charge of everything. They are in control of everything, to take charge of everything. But comparing it to federal constitution, which is what we practice here in Nigeria, you remember the 3 tiers of government. We have the federal, we have the state, and then we have the local government. So this federal constitution allows sharing of power across, across all other components of government. Like I mentioned, the state, the local government, and these are what makes up the federation. Example of countries that practice this. You have Nigeria, you have USA, you have Canada, and the likes. Please, like I said before, if you have questions, feel free to drop it on the chat box. We would attend to it as soon as we can. Now, that brings us to another point, as you can see on the screen, legal continuity. I'm also hoping that my voice is clear, and I'm hoping that everyone in class can hear me. Please, can someone confirm that you can hear me? Am I too fast? Do I need to slow down a bit? Somebody's asking for today's course. I recommend that the person in charge should attend to Otegu Jairus. I think he wants to know the name of the course. So those concerned will attend to you quickly. So the next we have is legal continuity. Thank you for your confirmation. The next we have is legal continuity and political discontinuity, right? And this refers to the consistent application of enforcement, to existing laws. Talking about legal continuity, this is the arm of the part of the constitution that enables, these laws, regardless of disruptions that may occur, regardless of political disagreement. It has been written and it must be followed to the last. Talking about political discontinuity, this is experienced when there is a change of power, right? Change of power, change of government, there's sometimes it brings about changes. They want to alter one or two things, to suit the goal of the new government. So it's about changes, about disruptions or shift, and which occurs as a result of shift in political leadership. So that being said, we quickly go into the provisions of an international constitution. The provisions of an international constitution. As you can see on the screen, An international constitution refers to proposals or frameworks defining a global governing structure and fundamental principles to tackle universal challenges collectively. So far, there's been no formal constitution that is being used at the moment. However, we would want to look at the provisions that is contained in an international constitution, right? So in simple terms, you can say international constitution is a framework that defines, global governing structure, a global governing structure that takes care of every country that is concerned, right? And as we dissect the provisions, I guess we'll get clarity on that. So looking at the screen, we also have the first to be universal declaration of rights, right? Everyone, every individual, every human, as the case may be, has the right or has a right. And these rights are also contained in the Constitution. So regardless of wherever you are, you have a right, right? And the government also have their own role and duty to play. So this actually directly speaks to specific powers and functions, responsibilities of the international organization. That's what this number 1 talks about, right? Yeah, some of us were privy to know about human rights and how they operate. This is also part of what they look at while engaging or while in operation. So this speaks to the powers, functions, and responsibilities of the international organization. This is one of the provisions of an international constitution. So the second one says planetary preservation principles. What do we understand by planetary preservation principles? Like I said earlier, I'd like to reiterate. The purpose of the constitution is not just for the government alone. It's also for the citizens. So the constitution is important for both citizens and also the government. Now, what does it do for the citizen? It helps them to protect their rights, right? It helps them to protect their right. It helps you to understand your rights and privileges. And then for the government, it helps you to understand the duties, roles, and responsibility of the government. So this planetary preservation principles actually speaks to a set of guiding values and actions, which is aimed at protecting, the ecosystem, right? So when some decisions are taken about climate change, natural resources, this is what speaks to it, and of course, regardless of the country you are coming from, you can find yourself anywhere, right? So wherever you find yourself, there is a constitution that protects you. I want to believe this is good to know. The third one says shared digital governance. Shared digital governance. From the word digital, that already tells you that from the word digital, you can easily tell that as a country, or let's use Nigeria as an example, right? As a Nigerian, you traveled, you found yourself in Australia, you found yourself in London. So you have the privilege, to benefit from this digital provisions, right? So what this particular point is talking about, it helps each country, right, that are under this provision. It helps them to partake in what we call decision making. So what it means is that wherever, as regards to the digital space, anyways, it involves security and other things. So, but then this directly tells us that provision is made for you as long as your country is under this international constitution. So provisions are made for inter-country relationship, to enjoy these privileges in the digital space. And then the fourth one talks about crimes against humanity, right? Like I said earlier when we started, I said where there is law, there is possibility of having offenses. And when there's offenses, there should also be punishment. So you'll also observe that some of our guys who traveled out, whether with the right intention or with the wrong intention, and somehow engage in some fraudulent act or crime. So this is where that comes in. So you are not exempted. You'll also face the law, especially when it has to do with humanity. When you talk about crimes that are against humanity, the first thing that comes to mind is crimes like genocide, murder, and the likes. So there's a part of the Constitution that takes care of it, and that's what this space is talking about. And then that takes us to the next one, which is mandatory justice, right? This helps us to ensure equity. So it means there should be no preference. Is that part of the international convention that talks about, fairness, equity in judgment? You will not say because this person is from Nigeria, should be judged differently. This person is no. The law is binding on everyone, and it helps to ensure fairness, equity in judgment, and also protect the rights of the people involved. So far, I'd like to know if there are questions. You can also drop on the chat. Also want to run through the effectiveness of the international constitution. The effectiveness of the international constitution. Looking at how effective is this constitution? How effective is it? The first point we want to look at is the national sovereignty. Global frameworks perceived as eroding unilateral control over domestic matters like economic policies, border security, or legal system may face state resistance over sovereignty dilution fears despite welfare enhancement potential from cooperation. So the international constitution actually helps to meet these needs, right? It helps to meet this need. Look at the second point, which says divergent political interest. So it's accommodating. It's structured. It was structured in a way that it accommodates everyone, regardless of where you're coming from, right? Regardless of your religion, regardless of your, your political background and the likes. And also, compliance guarantees deficit. So when we have a set of law guiding a particular organization or a particular country, it helps to maintain what? Orderliness. It helps to maintain peace and order. Even though as experienced in Nigeria, there are some things that go wrong. There are some things that do not take the right process. But it's very important that we know that these things exist. It's also very important that we know that in Nigeria, we also have a constitution. So you may want to say, but we don't actually follow these things. We don't actually follow these things. But it's very important that you know these things. You know your rights, and you know how to go about it when you're faced with issues. So we're looking at, let's now go into the Nigerian constitution proper. The Nigerian constitution. Let's look at the supremacy of the Nigerian constitution. It represents the fundamental law of a country that derives its authority from the people as the primary legal foundation, framing a nation's governing principles and powers. The Constitution reigns supreme over regular statutes in Nigeria legal framework hierarchy. So, what does this tell us? the Constitution is above every other thing. Someone is raising up his hand. There's a question we're trying to. Okay, someone said the provision, this provision number 5 is just on theory. It's not practiced. Take a look at the genocide in Gaza, for instance. What's the ICC doing? Okay. Yeah, your point could be valid, but like I said, we are not, we should not be concerned about what is done right and what is done wrong. So the purpose of this webinar is to, remind us or to inform us about these provisions. Right? These are the things contained in the code, but you will see in real practice that some of these things are not actually followed. But then the information is important so that you actually know what is right and what is wrong, right? So I wouldn't suggest we go into that argument. I've also seen another response, someone relating it to what happened in Rwanda. Okay, so we'll just continue. We've talked about the supremacy of the Nigerian Constitution. And let's look at the division of federal and state powers. The division of federal and state powers. Let's look at what is obtainable in the national government. Let's look at what is obtainable in the state government, right? It is the national government is obligated to regulate foreign and interstate commerce, provide army and navy, declare war, establish federal courts below the Supreme Court, conduct foreign relations, exercise powers, employed from express powers. Yeah, this is the role of the national government. The role of the state, they regulate intrastate commerce, administer elections, protect the public's health, welfare, and morals. I know many of us would disagree with that. And also establish local government system. However, they also play some rules. They also play some rules together. And those rules are taxes. That's why we have the FIRS for the federal level, and we have the LRS for the state. So I believe other states, if you're joining us from other states, I know you have your own. LRS means the Lagos State Internal Revenue Service. FIRS meaning the Federal Internal Revenue Service. So, but both of them are taxed with what? Gathering of taxes. And it is assumed that it is these taxes, it's the money generated from these taxes that is channeled into nation building and infrastructural development, both in the national level and at the state level. So one of the things the national and states do together is levy taxes, which is what I've just, then they borrow money as well, spend for general welfare, establish courts, enact and force laws, right? It's very, very important that we know about this so that you are not fighting the right fight in the wrong place. So sometimes when you have an issue, you should know where to channel your complaints to, right? I know there are platforms where they receive feedback. I know like we have one platform, is it the ICPC, where they gather feedbacks. If there's anything that is going on around you that you're not comfortable with, and you want to bring it to the attention of the authorities at the federal level, you can just go to their website and lodge in your complaint, and hopefully the government acts on it, right? So that being said, so those are the powers that are shared by both the national and the state government. The Supremacy Clause plays a pivotal unifying role in Nigeria's ethically and religiously diverse federation. the common allegiance fostered by constitutional reverence, focusing on shared universal rights and freedom, remains indispensable for national harmony beyond partisan interest to fulfill inclusive development, right? So this just buttresses the point supremacy. And that's why you hear people say nobody is above the law. Yes, even though we say that, even though we know this is sometimes it's not obtainable when you look at things that are happening in the country, especially Nigeria. But then the truth remains that nobody is actually bigger than the law. So it means if even if no matter your level, if you commit an offense, you are supposed to, you're supposed to be treated in accordance to what the Constitution says, and that's very, very important. That's very, very important. At this point, before we continue, I'd like to just hear from us. Let's talk a little bit about the historical development of the Nigerian Constitution. Quickly, somebody who is privileged to have that information, kindly share with us who was the first man that formulated the first constitution in Nigeria? I want someone to, this is supposed to be an engaging class. So if you have an answer to this, please, you can either speak or drop it in the chat box. Who was the first man that formulated the first constitution for Nigeria? And in what year? What year was that? What year did it happen? Yes, the floor is open. I need to be sure that people are actually following this line of conversation. Are they muted? Can they speak? Please speak if you have something to say. Please speak. Hello. I can see someone is unmuted, but I'm not sure I'm hearing what you're saying. Mercy, is there a problem? Did you ask them not to speak?
No, please feel free to unmute yourself and speak. I mean, you can go ahead and speak.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, Aminu said 1999 when democracy started. Okay, we need more answers. More answers. I may be forced to call names. Mr. David, can we hear from you?
Hello, good morning.
Yes, good morning, David.
Yeah, I think constitution starts when you get independent.
When we got independence. What year was that
Yeah,
again?
the moment a country get independent, that's when you start putting constitution into places. So that for your teaching, I remember I think you talk about military constitution and democratic constitution. So if you get independent and you are into a military rule, your constitution will be in the military format. Let me just use that word. Now, when you now convert to democratic, then you now have to amend the constitution into that system. So I feel the moment a country is getting independent or the moment a country is existing, then constitution should be, that's the first place you could start to put constitution into process.
Okay, thank you for your submission. Any other Someone is raising it. Mr. Daniel, please speak.
I think that was 29th of May, 1999 was when the Constitution.
1990 what?
1999.
1999. Okay, that was
And
also a good try.
I believe that the Constitution does not apply for a military regime. Military regime is ruled by laws by the military, so it does not apply for the military regime. So I believe 1999 was when the Constitution was actually when we became a republican state.
Okay. Any other submission so that we can round up with that? Any other submission? Lamidi, I can see your mic is unmuted. Yes, good afternoon. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, yeah.
Yes, good afternoon. I can hear you.
Nigeria as a federal state went through series of different constitutions. For example, the Lord Lugard Constitution during the colonial era, the McPherson and the likes. Then moving on, when we gained independence, we started with a particular constitution before becoming a republic in 1963. So during those era, there's a lot of the constitution that was used to govern the state before we now adopted the 1999 constitution. So I believe that these are the series of constitution we have gone through presently in Nigeria, and the one that is presently adopted is the 1999 constitution, although it was edited, but I don't think it's been implemented yet because there's still a lot of discrepancies in this society so far. So that's my take on it.
Exactly. Thank you for your assumption. That was awesome. That was awesome. So hello. Please speak. We can hear you. Sorry, you are not audible enough. Can you increase your volume? Okay, we may have to come back. You can drop a chat if you're having difficulties sharing your opinion. So the last speaker actually, gave us a concise information. So the question, I'm not sure some of us got the question. The question was, who formulated the first Nigerian constitution and in what year? I decided to take a pause so that we could look at the historical development of the Nigerian constitution. So I'm not sure we got that question correctly. The question is, who developed the first constitution for Nigeria? Like the last speaker said, we've had almost 7 to 8 different constitutions before we arrived at the 1999 constitution, right? And this were as a result of, amendment. As time goes on, they will discover that, there's need to amend this, Then there's a change. After that one, there's subsequent amendment comes, and that brought about changes, right? Not until we have what we currently work with right now. Okay, Abdusalam Abubakar said in 1999, when he's the head of state. Olatubosun said James Robertson, 1960. So I think in 1960, that was when Nigeria got independence, correct? But that wasn't when we had the first constitution. But that was a good try. Okay, so let's not waste much time on this. It's a name that some of us are familiar with, Sir Clifford, right? Sir Clifford was the man that formulated the first constitution for Nigeria, right? And this happened in 1922, Nigeria. And then we were colonized by the British. were colonized by the British as at that time. So he was the first person, although there was someone who pressured him to get exactly, fellow Stephen, correct, 1922, the Clifford Constitution. So after the Clifford Constitution, we had the Richard Constitution in 1946. You know, after the Richard Constitution, we had the Macpherson Constitution in 1951. After that, we had another one in 1954. After that, before we had the independence in 1960. So we've had a couple of them till we got even to the Republican, the second Republican, before the Nigerian Constitution in 1999. So that's just to refresh our memory and bring us up to speed so that we understand the subject of discussion. So let's go back to, thank you for the engagement anyways. Let's continue with the conversation. So let's look at, the first one to look at is the fundamental right. Fundamental right. Like I said earlier, this is one of the care of your rights, your privileges, and they form the major part of the Constitution. So before we continue, I'll quickly like to bring to our notice, just to also refresh our memories, that there are, regardless of what we have, there are four major functions of the Constitution. One is it defines and limits government powers. Two, it establishes the basic rights of the people, right? And that is what this number one is talking about, the fundamental rights. In subsequent slides, we'll also be looking at some of the sections that talks about the rights of citizens, in the country. Number three, it also talks about the structure and the rule of the government, right? And then the last one, it serves as the fundamental law of the nation. So meaning everyone in that particular country, everyone under Nigeria is under this particular law, under this particular rule. So we are binding by that particular rule. So that being said, let's look at the first, which is fundamental rights, enshrining cardinal human rights principles, covering domains like equality before the law, freedom of speech, beliefs, liberty, movement, protections, children and women welfare. Now, this is what the Constitution seeks to take care of. And I believe some of us must have heard when people say, it is my fundamental human right. I believe we've heard people make statements like that. Yes, so we have a right to freedom. We have the right to, freedom of speech. That's why when they say police is your friend, do not allow yourself to be bullied by the policeman, right? You can only do that if you actually know your right. But if you don't know your rights, you can be manipulated, or judgment can go against you because you don't actually know your rights. So there are rights, and as we continue, we'll be dissecting more into this. Now, the second is directive principles. Now, the Nigerian Constitution also seeks to, outline some principles that must be followed. And that's why we have sections, subsections, arms, or various sectors. There are principles that takes care of housing, healthcare, nutrition, and the likes. But at the end of the day, all the aim is to help protect, protect the rights of the citizens, and also make known the responsibility and duties of the government. So in real sense, it means that we are supposed to hold ourselves accountable. So we as citizens, we have a role to play. The government also has a role to play. So the Constitution is just like a reference point for everyone to know, have you done what you're supposed to do, right? To know who has fallen short of his responsibility. So we have a role to play. The government also has a role to play. The third one is the federal structure. The Constitution also, also makes plain the structure that exists in a particular country, like Nigeria, right? We have the federal, we have the state, and then we have the local government. You also get to see how duties or how the hierarchies of power in some jurisdictions, right? So there's a structure, and for a country like Nigeria, like I said before, things may not take the shape it ought to take. Well, I don't think that's what we should be looking at. What we should be focused on is what is the right and what the Constitution says, right? And if you're making any argument, maybe in the future you have a case and there's need for you to make an argument, your argument should be based on what the Constitution says, right? So that's it. So the one of the key parts of the Nigerian Constitution is the federal structure, under the legislative list, categorizing authority jurisdiction across domains like defense, policing, taxes, land. Just like in corporate organizations, in some organizations, when you walk into some corporate organizations, you discover they have what we call organogram. They also have what we call code of ethics that guides, the employee in that particular organization. They have a structure in place, the structure that shows the hierarchy, who comes first, who after that, who's the next person, who is reporting to this, who is reporting to that. So these things are important to know because it will help the free flow of activities in these countries or in these organizations. So, however, coordination challenges between multi-level agencies emerges service delivery fragmentation without binding cooperation, fostering mechanisms. However, localized policy customization enables targeted problem solving if grassroots insight utilization gets institutionally streamlined, right? So I think we've explained this. Let's look at the amendment procedures, right? Like one of us mentioned, I think Mr. Bello, if I'm correct, when there is always a time when the Constitution is being amended. So before it's amended, it goes through a serious review by the parties concerned. I think for a Constitution, I think we have 36 members, consist of 36 members, made up of from the creation of the first Constitution, right? Before the amendment was done. So there must be representatives from different arms so that it takes care of everybody's, every region. Nobody is left out. Now, looking at amendment procedures, seeking rigorous reviews before alteration. Before an amendment can occur in a constitution, it must have undergone serious review. Not just because somebody said, or not just because it didn't benefit Mr. A or Mr. B. So it must have undergone serious review before coming to the point of, that decision of, okay, there has to be an amendment. So Article 9 stipulates constitutional changes involved two-thirds approval by the National Assembly and corresponding ratifications by 3/4 of state houses to ensure broad consensus safeguards against transient interest of short-term legislative majority, right? So you cannot just, one arm cannot just wake up and say, oh, there's need to amend this, right? It has to pass through what? The national approval by the National Assembly and other corresponding bodies before the constitution can be amended. So this is also another key part of the Nigerian Constitution. Let's look at the number 5, which is the electoral framework. The electoral framework, right? Everyone has the right to vote. You have the right to choose who your president will be. You have the right to choose who your local government chairman will be. You have the right to choose who your governor will be. So this is the part of the constitution that sees to that, right? Outlining voter eligibility, political parties, electoral conduct, and petitions procedures. So like we all experienced in the last election, they were not just acting, right? They were following the constitutional transparency, even though we know there are possibilities of, not meeting what is expected. But this is what the Constitution says, right? It takes care of, the rights, the duties of the political parties, the eligibility of those that are campaigning, the electoral conduct, then those that are not satisfied. That's why we had Mr. P2B, challenge the result of the last election, by following the petition procedure. So these things are all major parts of the Constitution. And if you must act, if you must question anything, you must do that in accordance to what the Constitution says. So that takes us to the next one, intergovernmental coordination. Intergovernmental coordination. Concurrent jurisdiction across vertical agencies like healthcare risk, disconnected services minus binding cooperation mechanisms. So in Nigeria, we have so many agencies across the 36 states, right? And for there to be proper efficiency, there's need for this interrelationship, right? So the Constitution also makes provision for that. So if you also see, like, speaking from the security agencies in Nigeria, you discover that the EFCC sometimes works with the ICPC. The ICPC sometimes works with NFIU. Even to the international level, EFCC also collaborates with the FBI and the likes. That helps to enhance their coordination. It helps to enhance their work. So likewise, the national and the local government, there's this form of the Constitution also makes that provision that people, they are able to interact, they're able to, for them to be able to implement some certain procedures or strategies. Now, quickly, let's look at the merits of the Nigerian Constitution. Like we mentioned earlier, from 1922 down to now, we've had so many constitutions, the Clifford, the Richard Constitution, the Littleton, the Independence Constitution, and the likes, the Republican Constitution, until we got to the 1999 Constitution, which is what we are currently using in Nigeria. So this is very, very important. Let's pay close attention to this. And also for those that are preparing for exams, this is also another area to pay proper attention. So we're looking at the merits of the Nigerian Constitution, the 1999. So when we talk about the Nigerian Constitution, we are referring to the 1999 Constitution. Please take note of that so that you don't mix it up. Now, the federal structure devolving significant powers to subnational states enabling localized governance, benefiting from contextual knowledge, and closer citizen oversight. It is not possible for the federal to see to the matters of every citizen in the country. And that is why there's need for structures, there's need for, a system. And that's why it becomes important to break it down to, to state, break it down from state to the local level, so that, and it is the local, you notice that it is local government that can access, the grassroots, people in the villages. It is the local government. So the federal, they become the eye of the federal government in those localized areas, or those localized regions. So this is one of what the Constitution, the Nigerian Constitution, seeks to do. It has given powers to both the state and also to the local government to oversee some certain things, right? To oversee some certain things on their behalf and also give a report. Number two, the Independent Electoral Commission upholding rights like universal franchise, multi-party elections, and judicial petition mechanisms strengthened electoral integrity. Also, in cases of election, right, the Constitution has also made that provision that, the INEC at the federal level gives the state the right to also carry out these elections for lower positions, right, following a particular procedure and principle. It also talks about the separation of powers across the judiciary, executive, and the legislature. This is something where almost all of us are aware of, creating checks and balances to constrain abuse. And that's why we have the Human Rights Commission, right? So the Constitution also seeks to ensure that power is separated, across these three arms of government, which are the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature. Every one of them have their roles to play. The Constitution also outlines each of their roles and responsibilities, right? So that's very, very important to note. Let's look at the demerit. In Nigeria or in Africa, there's a saying that whatever has advantage has disadvantage. I don't know if it's applicable in all cases. But let's also look at the demerit, where the Constitution is found wanting, the 1999 Constitution. So the first point is overstretched concurrent jurisdiction across governance levels, risk coordination gaps, despite shared healthcare, education, environment. And then the supervision amidst legislative implementation disconnect. In simple terms, we would also have experienced, following the news, following what's happening in the country, there are shortfalls in some of these sectors, coordination gaps and all, as experienced in Nigerian. Let's call it the Nigerian factor, right? So the Constitution overstretched, the concurrent jurisdiction across governance. So it looks like for some things to happen, it has to come from a particular point. It has to come from a particular point. And sometimes this slows execution. It slows down execution. It slows down implementation of projects. It even slows down the economic growth in a way. This is also one of the demerits of the Nigerian Constitution. So it concentrated. Then let's look at the second point: concentrated amendment threshold requirements and procedures hampered periodic updates, realigning systems to evolving community expectation. Everybody has an expectation. Different communities, different localities, we have an expectation of what we want the government to do, or what the government is supposed to do, right? But then it must follow a particular process. And that's why sometimes we experience delay in execution of these promises, right? The next one is fiscal dependence of states on federal allocation. Now, the state actually depends on who's in subsequent slide. We also get to see the allocations from the federal government to the states and down to the local government level. So sometimes the state, they are totally dependent on what they're expecting from the federal. And due to the processes involved, it causes delays. There are so many delays experienced. That reduces their pace of action. It reduces their effectiveness. It even reduces their chances of meeting these needs as at when needed, right? So this is also one of the demerits of the Nigerian Constitution. Fiscal dependence of state on federal allocation. So, but thankfully, if you see what some states are doing now, they are moving a step ahead, and that's because they are able to function with the money generated from internally. Any state that will perform extraordinarily well, you discover that they are not just focusing on what comes in from the federal government. Rather, they start working with what they get internally. So that's also one of the demerits of the Nigerian Constitution. Let's quickly look at the rule of law. The rule of law. Like we mentioned, when we started this session, no one is actually bigger than the law. No one is above the law. Even though sometimes some people try to make a mess of that, but the truth is no one is supposed to be bigger than the law. So the law is supposed to be applied equally and fairness. The law is supposed to be transparent. The law is supposed to be independent. It should be accessible to all. The law takes care of separation of powers between the legislature, executive, the judiciary. So the agencies, the government agencies are supposed to act in accordance, to what the law says, because it is made in a transparent way by the people. It's supposed to be independent. It's supposed to be, everyone is supposed to be accessible. So you have the right. You have the right to access it at any time. And it's also open to criticism. It's open to criticism, but while doing that, we also have to be very, very careful so that we don't in the bid to criticize, we make nonsense of it. So, but these are what the rule of law is all about. So even punishment, before a punishment is assigned to a person, so there are punishment allocated to different levels of offenses. You don't just punish somebody because this person has offended. For every offense, there's a punishment that is linked to it, and that is what the law does. You understand? So the purpose of the law is to make life easier for everyone. So let's quickly look at the federal system of government in Nigeria. The federal system of government in Nigeria. Like we rightly mentioned, Nigeria is a federal state. So let's quickly look at it. A federation is a political organization that brings together several states or regional territories under an umbrella central authority. It involves power distribution across federal and provincial governance structure. In a federation, governance functions get constitutionally divided between overarching federal bodies looking after national matters like foreign affairs, defense, currency, etc. At the same time, state provincial entities handle more localized aspects like law enforcement, transport, and healthcare. The shared rule mandates power sharing and cooperation. So in the course of this conversation, we've also established that the Constitution also takes care of that, such that there is proper share of what power. It flows down to the state government, flows down to even the local government, right? So let's look at the difference between federation and confederation. We've also touched these areas in the course of our conversation, but we'll just run through quickly. So under federation, the first we have is citizenship. It's possible to have double citizenship in a federation as individual states come together to create a new state. For instance, US, people have double citizenship. So in other words, residents in the state of New York have both American and New York citizenship. But in confederation, it is not a new state, right? So all individuals are citizens of their confederate state, but they do not acquire additional citizenship. For this reason, it is much easier for states to leave a confederation than a federation. Another point there is currency. All member states of a federation tend to use the same currency, just like we do in Nigeria. Even if the provinces or the states, in other countries, they use provinces, but in Nigeria, we use states that came together originally, use different currencies. They must undergo a phase of change to adopt the currency chosen by the central government. In our own case, we have just one currency, and this is controlled by the CBN. All confederate states keep their currencies, and there is no intention to create a unitary budget or a common currency. Remember when we were discussing the types of constitution, we talked about unitary constitution and the federation. So that's just a reminder. Let's also look at, also to buttress what we've been talking about, federation gives rise to a new sovereign state. Confederation means where the sovereignty of the member state remain intact. So you can read this through. Federation is binding, whereas the confederation is not. These are differences between federation and confederation. Confederation has no separate laws, whereas the federation has separate laws. Federation is more stable, and the purpose of confederation is limited. These are things you can actually read up to have a better understanding. Also, this also applies to the sovereignty, confederation and federation. It's also something we can read up. Let's quickly look at the functions of the federal system in Nigeria and the relationship among the three tiers of government. So who can quickly remind us of the three tiers of government as we have it in Nigeria? We want this class to be very, very interactive. Quickly on the chat, just remind us, it's a reminder, it's not an exam question.
We have the federal, the state, and the local government.
Sorry, I didn't get you.
I said the tiers of government that we have the federal, the state, and the local government, sir.
Okay, good. Thank you. So we have the federal, the state, and the local government. Let's quickly look at Let's quickly look at each of them. Let's look at the relationship that exists between all of them. So you see that it is the federal government that takes care of the defense and national security. Federal government takes care of the police, foreign affairs, the interstate roads. Some of us that have traveled, you'll be wondering, why is it that some roads in some states have not been fixed? Meanwhile, some other places in that particular state are fixed. And then you'll be hearing excuses like it's a federal road. So when they say federal road, it means it should be done or it should be financed by the federal government. Example is the just concluded Third Mainland Bridge. Many of us are not aware that that project is a federal government project. Some persons are still confused. They think it's owned by Lagos State. No, it's a federal government project. The River Niger is a federal government project. Can anyone give us an example of roads that were built by the federal government? Quickly.
Example, the Lagos-Abeokuta Federal
Okay,
Road.
great. That's a smart one. Biniore, correct. Port Harcourt to Enugu is also a federal road. So those are the federal government is obligated to take care of those interstate roads. When we say interstate, it means it connects two states together. So the federal government is also in charge of mineral exploration, international routes, railways, the airports, the aviation facilities, communication, power supply, water, higher education, secondary education, tertiary education, agriculture, commerce, and tourism. Why the state government is in charge of also higher education. That's why we have federal government universities and we have state universities, correct? Someone is trying to talk. Lamidi, please, your voice is very low. Can you drop what you want to say? Can you drop it on the chat? Thank you. So that's why we have the state universities and the federal universities. So under the state government, we have the higher education, the secondary education, we have the primary education, maintenance of standards, urban and rural waters, transportation, housing, healthcare, agriculture, tourism, and you can see there are some like education, like tourism, both primary and secondary education. Then let's also look at the local government. The local government takes care of sewage disposal, environmental sanitation, maintenance salaries, market stalls, craft and small scale industries, and many other things that are not listed here. So this outlines the various responsibilities of each of these arm of government. So when you are complaining, you know where you are channeling your complaints. So you don't say, we need governor did not do well. So that's actually federal road, right? And it's supposed to be done by the federal government. So that takes us to, let's look at the revenue allocation formula in Nigeria. Like we also mentioned at the beginning of this class, there are allocation for each of these tiers of government that enables them to function, right? I know we must have also experienced cases where even after getting this allocation, we still don't see development in the state or even at the local level. But then the truth is that there are allocation. and that's the need for budgeting that is done yearly. Now, it is the responsibility of the Accountant General of the Federation, to manage all receipts and payments of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. This is supposed to be an independent office, but unfortunately, the Nigerian factor, somehow people in this position somehow influenced. But what we are discussing the Constitution. So, but this is the correct, what it should be. They are the ones responsible for the management of all receipt and payments of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. When we say receipt, it means everything, not the physical receipts that they are the ones in charge of every payment that should be done as far as Nigeria is concerned. So it's the primary responsibility of providing comprehensive accounting systems and controls in the ministries, departments, and other governmental agencies. So it is in the office of the Accountant General, or it is the Accountant General that controls this particular movement of cash, in the country. So they are also the ones that, look into the budget. They also work on it because it's something that is done yearly, and they also tend to review it, to meet the plan for the year. So the formula allocates 52.68%, 26.72%, and 20.60% to the federal, state, and local government. I think it is normal to see that the federal gets the highest allocation, right? So the 26.72% and 20.60% accrue to the state and local government, even though it is even though the state and the local government will also have to share it to other purposes, social development and the likes. Please, I would like to take a pause now. I'd like to take a pause. I'll be back in the next 5 minutes. If you have questions, please put it on the chat box. When we come back, we'll attend to it. So, but I'd like to take a quick pause, 5 minutes quick pause. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. Please kindly confirm you can hear me. You can drop a chat at the chat box. Okay, very well, very well. So we're discussing the allocation of the federal government, and let's look at the allocation formula. We talked about the 3 tiers of government: the federal, the state, and the local government councils. Now, these are the applicable rates, as you can see on the screen, right? The federal government, 52.68%, state government, 26.72%, and the local government, 20.60%. It is in the Constitution. You can find this in section 162, subsection 2 of the Constitution, which provides the distribution of an amount not less than 13% of revenue accruing to the federation account from any natural resources to the state where the said mineral is mined. The sharing formula for mineral revenue is presented below. You can see that the federal government, for the sharing formula for the mineral revenue, have 45.83%, have 23.25% for the state government, have 17.92%, then the last 13%. So these are the revenue allocation formula. Now let's quickly look at the constitutional rights and obligations of the Nigerian citizen. You recall when we started the class, we mentioned that the Constitution focuses on the rights, and this right is directly related to what? The citizens, and also focuses on what? Duties. These duties is connected to the government. So the individuals, the citizens have a role to play. Government also has a role to play. Let's look at the rights and obligations of Nigerian citizens. Respect for the ideals of the Constitution. So you are expected to respect, the laws contained in the Constitution. You should have respect for the national flag. We've attended functions and we see people just stand when the national anthem is being sung. That's actually very wrong. So when we talk about change, we want to see Nigeria a better place, a better country. I think the change should start from us as individuals, right? So when you find yourself in a corporate gathering, a social gathering, and the national anthem is being rendered, you're expected to remain, at the point. That's a way of showing respect, So you're expected to respect the national flag, the national pledge, and the legitimate authority. Don't say because you are connected to social person, you cannot abide. Some of us don't obey traffic lights. Some of us don't obey simple instructions, simple rules that guide even the estate where you live. There are little laws that governs every community. So as law-abiding citizens, we're expected to, obey constituted authorities. Enhance the power, prestige, and good name of Nigeria. Respect the dignity of other citizens and their rights. So respect the right of other citizens. Promote the spirit of brotherhood and neighborliness. This helps us. It will help Nigeria to become a better place. It's true that the country is actually going through, a rocky time. The economy is biting on everyone. It's very, very inconveniencing. But the truth is, we all have a role to play. as citizens. It's not enough to blame the government. What role in that your small space, what role are you playing? So this is what is expected of you. Promote that spirit of brotherhood and oneness. That's what we are known for. Also, make positive and useful contribution to the advancement and well-being of the community where you reside. Say one thing you want to do for yourself is to be remembered for something good when you are no more. Right? So it's important that we start from our locality to make that change, that desired change that you expect to see, at the upper echelon. Render assistance to appropriate agencies in the maintenance of law and order. I think Nigeria is we're still trying to work on whistleblowing policy, right? But then it's a dangerous one because nobody wants to fall victim. But I think it's important. When you see something, you say something. Not saying it to your friends or not gossiping to your neighbors, but to the constituted of those who are in charge, those who are obligated to take it up. But then you do that with care. Don't just talk anyhow. So that's very, very important. These are responsibilities and the duties of you as a Nigerian citizen. So let's take note of this. This is very, very important. Let's also look at the important functions of the constituted authorities. What we looked at is the responsibility and duty of you as an individual, as a Nigerian citizen. Let's now look at the important function of the constituted authority. So this speaks to the role of the government, right? So the most important function of the constitutional authorities is to ensure the fundamental rights of each citizens, right? These authorities are responsible for laying out the procedures for several administrations functions, execution of the government machinery, and legislation, right? A set of basic rules is provided by these authorities to maintain the harmony of society. That's why there are rules that we must follow, and it has been laid out by these constituted authorities. As if you look at the customs, they have their rules. Look at the police, they have their rules. And other sectors, other governmental agencies, they have their different rules that we must abide, right? Some of us don't like to obey the federal road safety. Some of us drive without seat belts. Some of us drive without functional brake lights. These things are little, you may think they are not necessary, but these are important. It also helps you as an individual. Helps to secure your own life. So even though these are rules that have been put by these governmental agencies to ensure that the citizens enjoy, good governance and enjoy being citizens of their country. The authorities also limit the government to impose decisions on the citizens. They encourage the government to fulfill citizens' aspiration. And that's why at any point where you get dissatisfied, you'd always, it's a popular saying, they say go to court. So you can always go to court and get a lawyer, get a legal representative, and fight for your right. So that's very, very important. Let's also look at the responsibilities and duties of government to the people. Maintenance of law and order, protection of lives and properties, provision of social welfare services, promotion of economic development, protection of your human rights. The government is obligated to protect your human rights. Maintenance of external relations, and also employment opportunities. Duties and responsibilities. Let's quickly look at citizenship. What are we talking about? Being a recognized citizen of a country. Being a recognized citizen of a country has many legal benefits, which may include, depending on the country, the right to vote, the right to hold public office, the right to social security, the right to health services, the right to public education, the right to permanent residency, the right to own a land, the right to engage in employment, amongst others. There are many others. These are the benefits of being a citizen of a country. So these are also the benefits, right? You have this as long as you are a citizen of a particular country. But we're looking at Nigeria. So many of us may not know this. These are the rights and privileges that we have. So at any point when you are not getting what you are supposed to get, you also have the right, to petition the agency or the body that is not performing well, right? Nigerian nationality is typically obtained under the principle of jus sanguinis by birth to parents with Nigerian nationality. It can be granted to persons with an affiliation to the country or to a permanent resident who has lived in the country for a given period of time through naturalization. In the course of the slide, we'll also see what it means to be a citizen of a particular country. In the previous slide, you've seen the rights that accrues to you as a citizen of a country, right? So in this particular slide, you can see the privileges as well. So you must be affiliated to the country, or a permanent resident. You must have lived in the country for a given period of time. This makes you a true citizen of a country. And when you become a citizen of a country, it means you have right to work, you have right to healthcare, and all other benefits that we've mentioned earlier. Being a recognized citizen of a country has many legal benefits, which may include, we've also talked about this before, there's no point repeating it. You have the right to own a land, you have the right to engage in business, you have the right to be employed, you have the right to hold a public office, and many more. Now let's look at the modes of acquiring citizenship. Now you can be a citizen by place of birth, you can be a citizen by registration, and you can be a citizen by naturalization. Place of birth, meaning you were born in this place, right? So you become a citizen and you are accorded the full rights and privileges, access to jobs, access to healthcare, and the likes. Also, you can become a citizen by registration. This is open to non-Nigerians, or as the case may be, foreigners who are married to Nigerian citizens. This is also applicable in other countries. So you can become a citizen by marriage. This is how it happens. Those who are legally married to, or foreigners who are legally married to Nigerians, and who have resided in the country for at least, 15 years. Although there are conditions that you must meet, before registering as citizens. So this is also obtainable in other countries. Then you can also be a citizen by naturalization. This also applies to foreign citizens who have legitimately resided in Nigeria for at least 10 years. You must have demonstrated good character, commitment to the nation. So these are the modes of acquiring citizenship. Now let's look at the fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy in Nigeria. Fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy in Nigeria. The obligations of government as provided in the Constitution. Number one, security and welfare of citizens. So the Constitution mandates government to secure lives and properties of all citizens as a governance priority via multi-agency collaboration spanning armed forces, police, paramilitary agencies, and justice institutions focused on intelligence gathering, community policing, emergency response capabilities, prosecutions, and reforms to proactively guarantee safety of lives across regions. You will observe that when expatriates are hired to come carry out a particular function here, you could tell the kind of security detail that is, kind of provision that is made for them. So the Constitution also sees to that, their welfare and also their security. And it takes the government to play that role. They must make proper provision for them. They must ensure that they are able to execute their job function while in the country without any security breach. So the Constitution also makes provision for that. Number two, economic prosperity and poverty reduction. The Constitution also requires government to formulate and implement fiscal, monetary, trade, and industrial policies, expanding productivity growth, decent jobs across competitive sectors, prioritizing agriculture, manufacturing, services, creative industries, etc., to boost export, self-reliance, and national prosperity. This is aimed at alleviating poverty, and increasing the standard of living for citizens. This is very, very important. The government is also obligated to do this, even as it is stated in the Constitution. So it is the obligation of the government to create policies that will enhance productivity, that will enhance business growth, that will bring about employment opportunities, that will bring about growth. This will also enable foreign investors to come into the country, and when that happens, you see the effect on the economy. It helps to improve the economy of the country. We also know, following what has been going on in the country, you see that some what's it called? Some international companies are leaving. So even though this is treated lightly, we know the effect on our economy as a country. If they leave, to bring about loss of job, to bring about employment, we'll have more people on the street. It will even increase crime rate, and these are factors that affect our economy. So this is the obligation. These are one of the obligations of the government as provided in the Constitution. Let's also look at protection of fundamental rights and liberties. The first fundamental obligation of the government is to protect and uphold the fundamental rights and liberties of its citizens. These rights, often enshrined in the country's constitution, include, but are not limited to, freedom of speech. We've mentioned this before. Religion, assembly, and the right to a fair trial. Through this obligation, the government ensures that every individual is treated with fairness, dignity, and equality under the law. So the Constitution will always seek that people are treated fairly, and equally, regardless of your religion, regardless of your state of origin, regardless of your background. So this number 3 talks about protection of fundamental rights. But how would you know if you're not informed? And I think this is it's a good time to also advise or recommend that once in a while, it's important that you grab, I think you can find it online, even on Play Store. You can grab the 1999 Constitution and go through it. It's going to be an eye-opener. You would get to learn a lot. You get to see things that you never thought you knew about before, because it helps you to stay informed. It helps you to know your fundamental human rights. And many more. So the next we'll be looking at is the directive principles and policy of the Nigerian government on cultures, the mass media, national ethics, and duties of the citizen. Before we continue, I think we would have to go for break. Mercy, please tell us how many minutes break we have. Also, let us know when we are to reconvene.
Okay, we'll be taking a 13 minutes break. We're taking a 13 minutes break from this time, and let's convene again by 11:30. Okay, so please grab some glass of water, some snack, then we're back by 11:30 to continue. Okay, David, we've seen your question, and when the lecturer comes back, he would discuss, or he would respond to that rather. So we'll be back by 11:30.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. So welcome back once again. Now we'll be looking at the directive principles and policy of the Nigerian government on cultures, mass media, national ethics, and duties of the citizen. I can see a question in the chat box. I hope the person that asked the question is online. Okay, so there's a question in the chat box. What is the structure of the Nigerian Constitution? Okay, that's a very good question. The truth is, there's no information that you cannot get online, right? You may have to read up to have a better understanding. But I also like to say the structure of the Constitution, reflects the principles, the separation of powers, the rule of law, and all these things we've discussed, democracy, and the likes. So if you check online, you'll also see that the Constitution consists of 320 articles divided into 8 chapters. And these 8 chapters takes care of everything that you need to know, ranging from the protection of human rights, the upholding the rule of law, the legal framework, promotion of peace and stability, duties, obligations of government, and other matters. So that's what makes up the Nigerian Constitution. I don't know if this answers your question. Then if you want to know more, you want to go deep into this, you can, go online or probably download a soft copy Constitution. You can look at it, read through the sections, you get to understand these things better. So that being said, we would like to continue. So now we're talking about the directive principles and policy of the Nigerian government on cultures, mass media, national ethics, and duties of the citizens. What we are trying to achieve here is basically to look at the provisions that were made for these 4 major areas: culture, mass media, national ethics, and duties of citizens. We want to look at the provisions as outlined in the Nigerian Constitution. So we want to look at what the Constitution says about these 4 areas as we picked out. There's a lot, So the first one in Chapter 2, Section 21 of the Nigerian Constitution, which expressly talks about the directive on Nigerian culture, right? It states, it states that the state shall protect, preserve, and promote the Nigerian cultures which enhance human dignity and are consistent with and B, encourage development of technological and scientific studies which enhance cultural values. Now, this is talking about Nigerian or the Nigerian culture. You understand? So you can agree with me that the purpose of the Constitution is actually not to see us be in conflict with our culture, right? You can see that with this section, with this provision here, you can see that there's a place of agreement between the Constitution and the culture in the country. And the Constitution sets to preserve, promote the cultures of our land. Of course, it enhances human dignity, with its fundamental objective, right? It also encourages them. See, the reason why most of these things we still uphold them in the country, right? So provisions were made for it in the Constitution. The next we want to look at is the Chapter 2, Section 22 of the Nigerian Constitution, which focuses on the obligation of the mass media. There is no sector, right? There is no sector or subsector in Nigeria that does not have a corresponding provision in the Nigerian Constitution. So provisions were made for almost everything, right? And I know a link has been shared. You can use that link to download the Nigerian Constitution. It's good to have it. If you can't afford to get the hard copy, it's also only on rare occasions where you need proper explanations, or maybe you're not so clear on what was discussed. You can so like I said, every subsector, every sector recognized in Nigeria, provisions were made for them in the Nigerian Constitution. And that's why everybody is expected to act in accordance to what the Constitution says. That's why the Constitution will continue to be a reference point for everyone that is functioning or that is under a constituted authority. Now, the section, chapter 2, section 22, focuses on the obligation of the mass media. So when we talk about mass media, what are we talking about? We're talking about the press, radio, television, and other agencies that promote, communication or mass media. So this section says the press, the radio, television, and other agencies of the mass media shall at all times be free to uphold the fundamental objectives contained in this chapter and uphold the responsibility and accountability of the government to the people. Like I said, everyone has a role to play. If you open the Constitution proper, you will now see where these responsibilities were broken down. You see the full breakdown of their responsibilities. You see their limit. You see what they are expected to do. You see what they are not expected to do. So when you have access to the Constitution, you can quickly go down to section 22, read up about the obligation of the mass media, right? But foundationally, we are meant to understand that it shall at all times be free to uphold the fundamental objective. If you even see some key positions, key government officials, when they move around, you can see they move around with media personnel. They move around with media personnel because there's need for them to cover, activities or cover their actions or whatever it is, whatever assignments they have to. And that's also a way for the general public to know. You know what the mass media does? It enables the general public to know the activities and the effort the government is making, on tackling some sensitive issues in the country. That's how the people are able to track. There's a way for the citizens to track the government action or their role. That's how you're able to know how far they've gone, in meeting their obligation. So this is also very, very important. The next we want to look at is the section 23, which talks about the national ethics. Like I said when we started the class, for every corporate organization, for every corporate body, there must be, binding principles, ethics that governs their operation. And the purpose of having this ethics is so that people do not, function in an, or people do not constitute nuisance, right? People do not constitute nuisance. People follow these principles, follow these ethics to ensure that they meet organizational goal, right? So this is also applicable in Nigeria as a country. Provisions are also made in section 23 of the Nigerian 1999 Constitution. National ethics. The national ethics shall be discipline, integrity, dignity of labor, social justice, religious tolerance, self-reliance, and patriotism. So these provisions were made under this section. If you open the Constitution proper, you see a breakdown where each of these things were taken line by line. But this is just for us to be aware that the Constitution actually, takes care of these major areas. We've talked about culture, we've talked about mass media. Currently, we're talking about national ethics. So the next one we want to look at is the duties of the citizen. In one of the slides, we also mentioned that, or from when we started the class, we talked about the role of the Constitution, and I would also like to, say it again, protecting the rights of the citizens. So when we talk about rights, we're talking about the right of the citizens. When we talk about duties, we're talking about duties of both government and the citizens. When we talk about right as well, we talk about right of citizens and also right of the government. So this section 24, is talking about the duties of the citizens. Now it says, it shall be the duty of every citizen to abide by this Constitution, respect its ideals and its institutions, the national flag, the national anthem, the national pledge, and legitimate authorities. So it is very wrong to disrespect constitutional authorities, especially when you know you are wrong. Right? It is very, very wrong. So and once you do that, something should already tell you that you are going against the law of the country. The B part of it says, help to enhance the power, prestige, and good name of Nigeria, defend Nigeria, and render such national service as may be required. I know we see the opposite of this, especially on social media. We had some persons who will come out to say they regret being born in Nigeria. Yes, but then one question you have to ask yourself, is this constitutionally right? We are supposed to help to enhance the power, prestige, and good name of our dear country. Defend Nigeria as much as you can. And then the C says, respect the dignity of other citizens and the right and legitimate interest of others, and live in unity and harmony in the spirit of common brotherhood. We've also touched this in one of the slides. It's very, very important that we respect, ourselves as citizens, respect our rights, respect our interest. Let's be more focused on unity. Let's be more focused on harmony and, the African spirit, brotherhood, togetherness. That's what will help. It's expected that this will help the nation, move forward. Let's also make positive and useful contribution to the advancement, progress, and well-being of the community where we reside. So we are expected to live as good examples wherever we find ourselves. Starting from your local community, starting from your local church, starting from your office. You're supposed to be, a person of value by first living right, and obeying the laws of the land. Also, it is your duty to render assistance to appropriate and lawful agencies, the maintenance of law and order. Some of us have made statements like, even if I know the person that did it, I will never say it. Yeah, you may have your reasons, but then the question to ask, is it right to say that? Is it right to do so? Is it right to take that stand? It is your duty as a citizen of Nigeria to, render assistance when you can, right? And lastly, it is your duty to declare income honestly to the appropriate and lawful agencies, and also pay your tax, when due. Nobody is above the law, like we rightly said. And it is beneficial when we become law-abiding citizens, regardless of the negativity that flies around. It is highly beneficial. And I mean, when you obey the laws that is binding, or when you obey the laws of your community, that already gives you a platform to pursue justice whenever there's a case of dispute or dissatisfaction. And there's a saying that he that must come to equity must come with clean hands. So this buttresses that point. We must be first-hand, citizens by living right, and following what the Constitution says. Some of us are not yet of the age of paying tax. But if you get to that point, it's important, because the money generated from this tax is what is used for nation development. It's what is used for infrastructural development and all other benefits. So that is very, very important. Having said this, there are other sections that you can, take your personal time to study. There are other sections you can look out for, that talks about the fundamental human rights, that talks about protection, your protection as a citizen, that talks about the rule of law, that talks about, legal framework, binding different cases, talks about the promotion of peace and stability in the country. So there are different sections that you can take a look at, so that you can be informed in these areas. It helps you to stay correct. It helps you to act right. And it helps you to be a better citizen of Nigeria. At this point, we've come to the end of this presentation. I would like to leave us with one word. It is beneficial to us to understand that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Don't let anybody deceive you. Nobody is bigger than Constitution. Everyone will be judged by what is written in the Constitution, right? So it's important. It's always better to, be on the positive side. It's always better to be on the right side of life, regardless of environmental conditions, economic situations, peer pressure, influence from friends, and technology. It's always safe to be, a reliable citizen of Nigeria. At this point, I'll be saying goodbye, and thank you for your time. If you do have questions, please feel free to drop your questions on the chat. Be glad to attend to your questions. If you have questions, please feel free to drop them on the chat box. I would also like to ask, so having gone through this slide, how many of us are willing to be patriotic citizens of Nigeria, regardless of what is happening around you? How many of us? It's wise to answer. There may be a gift for anyone that answers. So give us your sincere response. We have a token for the first two persons that answers the question. Yes, the floor is open. Somebody should say something. I can see David, I can see Chukwuebuka Daniel, I can see Omar, I can see Jairus, I can see Precious Sunday. How many of us are willing to be patriotic citizens? Yes.
Hello.
Who's talking?
Chukwuebuka is talking.
Yes, go ahead, Daniel. Go ahead, Daniel.
Of course. I am willing to be a patriotic citizen because I don't see any reason why I shouldn't be a patriotic citizen. If you look at the way our country system was created, you realize that in so many ways our country has made things easier for us. Because if we compare our country's finances with other countries' finances, you realize that people outside are they're not getting it easier than we are. The reason why Nigerians always feel that people outside the country have it better than us is because of the way their economy started. It's just the economy difference, that's all. It's the dollar rate or the difference in currency that makes it look like they're better than us. Most of them would live in wooden sheds. Most of them don't even have a better place to stay. But Nigerians, as a Nigerian, you can easily buy or attain whatever you want to attain as a Nigerian. So for me, I really feel that our government has tried their best, and I believe they will still try more, because I've said it before. I told a friend something. I told somebody that before this country can become better, we have to go through a lot of damages. I've never seen somebody that climbs a mountain from the beginning to the end once. That the country has to go through a lot of hardship and a lot of damages before it can finally attain the greatness that somebody like me I'm seeing. So yes, I'm patriotic to the very end. Patriotic to the very end.
Wow, that's interesting to note. Thank you for your submission, Mr. Chukwebuka Daniel. So kindly share your contact details and your network, your choice of network. Yeah. So who was the second person? Oh, there's a chat. Somebody said, come again. Wow. I'm not Jesus Christ now. It's only Jesus that can come again. Okay. David said, I'm not ready because the constitution doesn't favor some of us. Can you please unmute and speak to this, Mr. David?
All right, good evening. I mean, good morning,
Yes.
good afternoon, sorry. Good afternoon, sorry.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Yeah. Go ahead, please.
I think Mr. Chibuka probably cheaper in some things, yeah, but there are a lot of us that regret to be citizens of a nation, especially when you realize that there are certain laws that are put into places, but when some of us that are at a lower level, if we trespass that law, it seems that we are brought heaven and earth down and we will be punished daily for it. But there are some people who are at the top of the level or in government. In fact, like the law, they are even above the law. And as a human being, you are, it's just like you are in a class where you see and you make noise and you have been beaten for that noise. Then when somebody else make noise and that person not been beaten, probably because the person is the child of the principal or the person is the child of a teacher. So that's kind of situation we have found ourselves. If the constitution were really fair for everybody, if the constitution were really balanced, like what Mr. Ibuka just said, I believe we will not be experiencing what we are facing right now in this country. Nigeria have everything to feed the Africa as a whole. Let me use that word. They have everything. They have resources. In fact, they shouldn't lack of anything. But because there's a constitution that says this, and you have to follow it. Imagine a constitution is saying that somebody have to go for 210. So it means that whether the person is doing well or the person is not doing well, the person focus is that he may complete that 210. And even if that person complete 110, you still want to come back again to complete it. There's the constitution that says that if you enter, they can't impeach you. Even if they try to impeach you, they will try to, even in the constitution, the impeachment in the constitution, but they can't do it, they will bend it. So when you are looking at a lot of things that is happening, if the constitution were really fair for everybody, for us, I believe this country should have been somewhere where some of us will be happy about it, but it's not fair. So I'm sorry to say that I'm not ready. I'm sorry to say that I regret, but this is the situation I find myself. I believe millions of Nigerians will find ourselves in that situation. And that's why some people are not proud enough to go out and say they are from this nation or their nation of this, their nation. I had a friend of mine that just shared his story with me some time ago. He said he traveled to one country, I think in one European country, that he denied his citizenship of Nigerian. He denied it totally. In fact, he used Nigerian passport to get, but he got there, he denied his citizenship. And he shared a reason why. And because he used another country name, he got favor. And other people that were using Nigerian name, they couldn't get the favor. But at the end of the day, it's somebody a testimony, not somebody, but it's so ashamed and disgrace that we can't go out and knock our chest, say, yes, we are for this family. This is my father. I'm a son of this person. I'm a son of this, that, and we are having it. So I'm sorry if I say I'm not ready, but that does not mean I will go against the law or I go to the normal business rule. But I know if I do that, I will be very punished. But that's the situation I find myself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your submission, Mr. David. I appreciate your sincerity, and I think I understand where you're coming from, right? We all may have a diverse opinion, right? Especially we tend to react to how the economy is biting us. But I think one thing is certain. Will you stand for what is right, or will you stand for what is wrong? Regardless of what the economy is saying, or regardless of what the imperfections of the government or those in authority. So
I would definitely stand for what is right, sir. But there are some things that there are some right you will stand for. It will lead you into trouble. So that's the reason why a lot of people get there, and they will see white, but they will want to turn it black, because if they come out and say white, and by it may be leading them to somewhere, and that's where we find ourselves. But if I see something that is right, I will stand for it. We all work in offices, businesses, where we want to show that level of integrity, that level of transparency. But there's some way you will try to show it, you will be stepping on some toes. And so that's the way we find out. So it just seems that everybody just see you like everybody is still the same. But even with that system, we still have some people who have that integrity and transparency. And that's it. But I hope to be in that line of integrity and transparency.
Okay, thank you for your response. My happiness is that at least you started by saying you stand for what is right. I think that should be a take home for every one of us, right? We have to approach life with first the right mindset, right? Regardless of what is happening around us. It's very important. In as much as we also blame the government, we also blame the government for their shortcomings, right? We also have a role to play, and that was why when we started this conversation, I talked about the right of the citizens, duties and responsibility of citizens, the right of government, duties and responsibility of the government. So you see, everyone has a role to play, right? The big question is how are we really living up to expectation, in carrying out our responsibility. We still have citizens, we still have people who walk on the streets and they throw nylon on the floor, and we still blame it on the government. We still have people who do not observe traffic rules. We still have people who, sanitation rules, and many more. So you see, it's not fair to just look at it from the side of the government. Let's also look at it from the side of some individuals. We know there are quite a few number of people that are, that are doing the right thing. But then I think that's the best position to be, being on the right side of life. And hopefully, we pray that God helps us to, get to our destination, get to the height we want to get to in life. Thank you for your submission. That was awesome. I would like to end on this note. Stand for right.
Sorry, Emmanuel, before you end, there is a hand up. I think Chukwebuka's hand is up. So you can take it.
I thought he spoke before. Okay, go ahead, please.
Sorry, I just wanted to bring in something based on what Mr. David said, and I like the fact that he was open and truthful about it. But yes, it is true. Nigeria is not really standing for the people, especially the lower class. Truthfully, yes. But there's a difference between the constitution and corruption. There's a very huge difference between the constitution and corruption. The words of the constitutions are correct. It's intact. There is no abbreviation. I've gone through it a lot, and I've realized that the law is just there. But the problem is people that manipulate the system are also there. People that will never, that because they have money or because they have wealth, and it applies all over the world. Now, the truth is that most of the bad things that happen in countries all over the world, not all countries publish it on their social media platform. They don't carry it out the way other countries carry it. In India, last year, in India, there was a lot of issue of counterfeit for money and a lot of fraudulent activities. According to them, they said that they lost almost half of the funds of India's funding on budgetary. But the whole world hear about it. No, nobody heard about it. It's because of market research that I'm able to even know about that. Not just in India, but so many places in the country. There's a lot of high corruption. Some countries, some places in Russia, the places where the poor people are mostly, did they hear about it that they went there and they gunned down most of them just because they want to take over their area? No, they don't say it. But Nigeria is a kind of open place. Anybody can come into Nigeria, but when it comes to living in Nigeria, it becomes a problem because our corruption is wide open for the world to see. So it has become that easy. So that's why it feels that Nigeria is the one with the back end. If you carry your passport to some places, they'll reject you because you're Nigerian. Nigeria is known for corruption. Nigeria is known for this. Nigeria is known for that. But that's a lie. Because I've seen the reality, I've done the market research, I've done the reports, and I've realized that Nigeria is actually doing better as a country than most of these other countries. We are just because we as the citizens are trying to adjust to changes, which has been happening slowly during the years. But this is the first time that it happened rapidly. Like it just happened rapidly, and we are being forced and pushed to adjust whether we like it or not. But that's just how the world is. The world itself is already polluted to the point that we Nigerians are now blending into the world. But if we sit down and compare our country, our government, and everything with other people, that's where we'll feel, because our country is still very, very young. You can't compare it to America. America is in their hundreds. Britain, I don't know if Britain is still in hundreds again. Most countries are already in their 100. Nigeria is still a very young country, and we are still growing. So, Mr. David, I understand what you have gone through or what you are going through. And the fact that you are willing to keep the law and still abide by it is a very good thing. But this country has more potential to grow than any other country in the world. More potential to grow than any other country in the world. That's one of the reasons why I still tell people that it is better for the people to fight than leaving everything for the government. Because the biggest weakness of Nigeria is the people. We have left what we are supposed to do, and we are trying to put all the blame on government. The moment we realize that the key to this country's growth starts from us, not the government, this country will begin to take a better run. What is the cause of the increase in food stuff now? Okay, the dollar has finally come down. Did the food stuff come down? No, they did not come down. Importation and exportation, okay, after the value now, the thing is balancing, even without us importing goods or from outside again. The way the production of goods in Nigeria is now balancing, but the prices are not still coming down because the people themselves want to gain more profits from capitalism compared to any other thing. It's the people that's the problem, not even the government most of the time, and not the country, not the they're not doing. If we Nigerians can decide, okay, to love Nigeria, work together as Nigeria, to build Nigeria, Nigeria would definitely be one of the best places in the world. That's all I'm saying for now.
All right, awesome. That's a beautiful speech, and I think that crowns it all. You know, Mr. Ibuka he has gone deep into this. And you can see that everyone has a role to play. Everyone has a role to play. So we cannot fold our hands and leave it for the government alone. We also have a role to play. And I like that clarity. Our topic for discourse is not corruption, right? We are discussing the Constitution. What is contained in the Constitution, right? So, okay, yes, I've seen your number. Thank you. We'll share a token with both of you. This is just to encourage everyone of us to participate. Try to participate during sessions. It's very important. We get to learn from each other. There's a saying The day you stop learning, the day you start dying. So whether you are the position of speaking or listening, make it a point of duty that you have something to learn. That's very, very important, right? Like I said before, Mr. Ibuka, it's very important. And Thomas Manson made a quote. He said, "Stand for right, even if it takes you standing alone. Stand for right." If you have few persons who have the same mindset, or who has that same dream or that burning desire to make Nigeria a better place, if we have more of those people, don't you think we'll start seeing the change that we desire? So these things are practical. They are not. Sometimes we spend more time praying about Nigeria. You know, we're investing so much energy, but we barely even love our neighbor. Yeah? So somehow you can even liken the constitution to the Bible. It has some content that preaches or that that promotes unity and all. So if we actually leave out what is in the constitution, Nigeria will definitely be a better place, and that's the truth. So please, let's take this home, and try to be better people. Thank you for this wonderful time, and I hope to meet you some other time. Thank you for your engagement. You get the token shortly after the meeting. You can also, if you want to make more studies on, the corruption index, we'll share a link. You can just click on it. You see the global corruption index. You can click on it. You can also make research. Look at the ACFE report to the nations on corruption. You see what's happening. You would appreciate the fact that Nigeria is, even though we are complaining, but Nigeria is not doing so badly. I'm not sure we made the first 10 in the ranking of corrupt countries or most corrupt countries. Go and check. So the link has been shared. Just click on it and take your time to go through it. Most of the countries that you don't believe, like Finland, Ireland, Denmark, that is where corruption is gaining serious weight. But then because we are in Nigeria, we are more vocal, we are more on social media, so it looks like this is where everything is happening. But sometimes let's not move by what we see. Let's go beyond that. Make your research. You would appreciate what you have. Once more, thank you for your time, and I hope you do have a great weekend. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Emmanuel. That was a beautiful and informative and educative time with you. The students would agree with me. And I'm glad that we are ending this academic session with this very course, GNS 111, Citizenship Education. So thank you, Ebuka. Thank you, David, for your submission. I like the sincerity, and then I like your boldness in saying whatever you had to say today. I'm super proud of all the students who have given their engagement in one way or the other. Your contribution is well appreciated. Thank you so much. We wouldn't gather here if you did not register, so we appreciate you for this wonderful time. Thank you so much. All right, so for today's lectures, the lecture material has been sent into your WhatsApp platform. Please do well to go ahead and study them, okay? And then secondly, I want to still talk about your studies. Please take your studies very seriously. Please do take it very seriously. Just compare, put yourself in the shoe that you are in a physical school. The way you behave in the online school, is it the same way you want to behave in the physical school? So please in as much as we do not want to discipline some persons, but there is call to order. So let every one of us work in order. When an information is posted on the group, please, let's do well to read it, read every information, so you will not be left uninformed. Okay. So coming up next week, we will be having 2 tests. So I'm going to send you your question and answers latest today. For the test we'll be writing on Tuesday. We will be writing elements of public administration on Tuesday, and then on Friday we'll be writing a test on this very course which we took today, which is citizenship education. Please take your studies seriously. Okay. I think it's on top of the question, you will see 21. You should have 21 and above. That's your pass mark. Please do well to get all those things right. Okay. So if you have any challenges, inquiries, please feel free to chat us, message us, email us, and then we will be there to give responses to your queries. Okay, so your exams is coming up in 2 weeks' time. Please, we want you to put your heads together. We do not want anyone to fail. Okay, so just put your head together and study to come out the best. All right, and then if you still have outstanding concerning the fees, please let's know your challenges. We sometimes ago, we mentioned that if you are not able to make the payment in bulk, you can cut it into 2 so that it will be easy for you to make your payment. The same thing applies for the exams fee. If you are not able to make 15,000 naira at a go, you can decide to do it in 2, okay, so that everyone, you will not just get the lecture and then not get your certificate. Your certificate is as well important. So this is all I have to say for now. Any other announcement will be made known on the group. So do well again to study your books. I wish you a very best of luck in your exams and in your test. All right. Do have a very beautiful week. My name is Mercy. All right. Bye for now. All right, please, I have a question on the group. David and Chukwuebuka, have you been sent your tokens, please? Maybe you can reply us here, or you reply it on the group. All right, thank you so much. Okay, Buka has received his. David, how about you? You're welcome, Ebuka. Thank you. You're welcome. Okay, that will be all for now from me. Do have a wonderful day. Okay, Jimoski, thank you. Jimoski says thank you that he has received. All right, thank you, everyone. Do have a wonderful weekend.